Yeah, good morning everyone. You are welcome to the basic introduction to Python programming class, which will be taken by me, Afolabi Abib. I'm a 500 level student of Ladoke Akintola University of Technology. So let's get started with the Python class. Yeah, so Python programming. So what is Python programming? So I'll outline before we go down to definition of Python programming. So let's talk about the outline for this course. So we'll be doing the Python basics, the flow control, the functions, list, dictionaries, and structured data, and likewise manipulating strings. So the introduction to programming includes what is programming, what is Python, downloading and installing Python, starting the IDLE, and likewise asking smart programming questions. So let's get started with the first aspect of it, which is what is programming. So what is programming? Programming is simply the act of entering instructions for computer. To perform these instructions might crunch some numbers, modify text, look up information in files, or communicate with other computers over the internet. All programs use basic instructions as building blocks as their building blocks. Here are a few of the most common ones in English. Do this, then do that. If this condition is true, perform this action, otherwise do that action. Do this action that numbers of times, which is something like a while or a for loop, a loop statement. Keep doing that until this condition is true. So basically programming is something very not that difficult. It's just like mimicking a normal English language, like speaking a normal English language in another syntax. So now, before we go down to Python, we need to understand that it's not only Python that is the only programming language that is in the world. We have numerous of programming language like Java, Ruby, C, C++, C Sharp, Python, and some other programming languages. So, but we are choosing Python because Python is more easier to understand faster compared to other programming languages, and is one of the most versatile programming languages in the world that people are learning right now. So now let's move down to Python. What is Python? So Python refers to the Python programming language with syntax rules for writing what is considered valid Python code, and the Python interpreter software that reads source code written in the Python language and performs its instructions. The Python interpreter is free to download from the Python website, which I will show every one of us how to get it for each and every of our OS that we are making use of. There is Python for Linux, for the Mac OS, likewise for the Windows. So now let's show ourselves how to get Python interpreter online. So let's go down to our browser. You can make use of any browser, be it Google Chrome, Firefox, or Mozilla. So I'll be using Google Chrome here. So go to the Python website, which is www.python.org, to get our Python interpreter. So you can do that even if you don't know the website. You can just do that by typing Python into our search engine and press enter. So you can see the first thing that came up on our search engine was welcome to python.org. So click on it and it will take us to the Python website. So now here we can see we have our Python website there. So we'll go to this download section, so which is around so you can see that the latest Python available online is the Python 3.91, in which you can download. One thing you need to understand is that there are we have various versions of Python. We have Python 2. Staff version, which is Python 2.7 on and on. We have the 3 version, which is Python 3.245 on and on. So the latest version is 3.9. Yeah, so you can just click on the latest version, and here we have it. So you can just scroll down and search for the download option. So from here now you can see from the files we have the versions of Python that you can download. You can see we have the version for the gzipped source starboard, we have for macOS, we have for Windows, we have for every kind of OS. So basically we'll be downloading for me, I'm making use of Windows OS, so I'll be downloading for Windows, and my system is 64-bit, so I'll be downloading for 64-bit. So before you download, you need to check the bit of your system. If it is 64, you download for 64, and if it is 32, you download for 32. You can see they are all available on the website. So for me, I'll be downloading the 64-bit, so I will click on it and to start downloading. So that's it. So after downloading, what's next? Next thing for us to do is to install the OS. So you can see I downloaded the zip version of it. So let me just open it. So it's a zip file, so I have to unzip it. So let me just go to okay. So hold on, let me try and share my screen for you to see how it's been downloaded. It's been unzipped. So come to my file, go to file, on your file go to download and right click on it, unzip the file, extract here, and then okay. After extracting, okay, I think I have it installed on my own OS before, so that might be another issue for us. But all you need to do is just to download the file and extract it and run the file, install it on your OS, and that's all. So now to run the OS, make use of the Python IDLE now. So all you need to do is go to your start menu. So in your start menu, search for the Python installed file, so you see it there. So once you see the Python file, open it and you will see something like IDLE Python 3.7 and the bits. So click on it and your IDLE will open. So and it looks like this. It looks exactly like this. So it looks exactly like this. Yeah, I hope you can see it. So that's the IDLE. So here now, this is our interactive shell. So we can enter some little things like simple arithmetics and do some magics in Python, like 2 plus 2. And you run it, you can see you have your 4, 3 times 3, and you get it. So this is our Python IDLE. So for the start, we'll be making use of this IDLE for the beginner. So as we move on, we'll move to some other advanced shells. So now let's go back to our class. So now we know what Python is, and we've been able to download the Python OS. So now let's move to the basics of Python. So the basics of Python includes entering expressions into the interactive shell, the integer, floating point, and string data types, string concatenation and replication, storing values in variables, and run our first program. So we will be taking these points one after the other and explain to us how it's been done. So now let's move to the next slide. So entering expressions into the interactive shell. You run the interactive shell by launching the IDE like I've explained before earlier. So which you install with Python in the introduction. On Windows, open the Start menu, select All Programs, Python 3 points, whichever version you downloaded, and then select the IDLE and you run it, be it on your Mac or your. So, first thing we need to do is let's try and test our shell by entering some arithmetic figures. So, let's open our IDLE. Yeah, so on our IDLE, let's just enter anything like, let's add two numbers together, 2 plus 2. So press enter and you see it works. 3 minus 2, enter, you can see we got 1. So 4 divided by 2, we got 2. Likewise, 4 times 5 should get 20. So that's good. Our Python is working perfectly. Our interactive shell is working perfectly. So now let's move to the next thing. Yeah, so now the next thing is the math operations for from highest to lowest precedence. So this is something we need to understand. From you can remember very well, when we are doing this board mass of it, where we are saying in school, we have board mass, which is brackets, orders, or they call it of division. So those are the precedence of those that arithmetic projection arithmetic precedence. So is the same thing applies in Python as well. So we need to understand those things in Python. So I'll be showing us the precedence of the arithmetic operations. So the first thing we have on the list is the exponent, which is our double star. Next thing is the modulus. What modulus does is that it prints out the remainder of our division. So as you can see, 22 divided by 8. So it prints out 6, which is the remainder after the division. So 22 divided by 8 should give us something like 3. So but the remainder 3 point something. So the remainder is 6. So that's why we're having 6. That's the work of the modulus. So we have the integer division, which is also called the flood quotient. So this gives us the actual division, the first division. So you divide 22 by 8. So yeah, exactly. So 22 by 8 will be 2, remaining 6. So it will print out the actual division and eliminate the remainder. So the division itself will print out the actual division for us, which is 2.75. You can see 22 divided by 8 gives 2.75. We have the multiplication, which is 3. You can see an example: 3 times 5 gives us 15. We have the subtraction, we have the addition. So what this simply means is that if we have an arithmetic operation whereby all these things are being used, so it will solve down from the highest precedence down to the lowest. So it's not like it's just going to pick randomly. So it will start from the highest precedence down to the lowest. So we need to understand that very well in Python. It's very necessary in Python. So now let's talk about the integer, floating point, and string data types. So remember that the expressions are just values combined with operators, and they always evaluate down to a single value. A data type is a category for values, and every value belongs to exactly one data type. So we need to understand our data type very well. That's one of the most important things that we need to understand in Python. So our common data types includes integers, floating point numbers, and strings. So we can see examples for each data types. So for integers starts from negative value, like negative value, down to the positive. And so we have like negative 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on and on. However, our floating point numbers, so they are in decimal form. That's like minus 1.25, minus 1.0, minus 0.5, on and on, 1.5, like that. And we have the strings, which includes alphabets and word, like and also alphanumerics. So you can see examples of that. We have our A, we have hello, we have cats, 11 cats. So those are strings. And one thing we need to understand very well when we're working with strings is that our strings will always be in quoted form. So that's very important. We need to note that. So string concatenation. Let's talk about string concatenation and replication. So the meaning of an operator may change based on the data types of the values next to it. Basically what we know from our mathematics is that the operator signs are used to add integers, to add numbers. So but in Python you can make use of some operators. You can make use of it with string values. So that's the reason why I told us that the meaning of operator might change based on the data types. So we can make use of operators when it comes to strings. So however, when plus is used on two string values, it joins the strings as a string concatenation operator. So basically what they are trying to say there is that let's say for instance now we have hello and we have word. There are two different strings. So if we apply the plus operator to it, it's going to add the two strings together and return into hello word. Let's show ourselves. Let me show you an example of that. So let's go to our IDLE. So there's our IDLE. So on our IDLE now, let's say we have our hello. This is our hello. So you can see that it's a string on its own, and we have our word. This is a word on its own. So don't forget, when you are writing your string, don't forget the quotes. Our strings should always be in quotes, so put that in quotes. So if we add the plus sign now, we add the plus sign to it and we'll print it, it's going to give us what you can see. We have hello world. So hello world. So you can see that everything is joined together. But if we want it to be separated, we can actually add a space at the back of hello or at the front of word. Let's do that. So let's say we have hello, or add space before close the closing tag. Then we'll make use of our operator. Alright, world. So let's print it, and you can see we have our hello world. So you can see that the operator, the plus operator, can be used to concatenate two strings or more strings together to give us a different string entirely. So let's continue. So now we have, however, if you try to use the plus operator on a string and an integer value, Python will not know how to handle this, and it will display an error message. So basically what they are trying to say here is that if you try to add two operators, okay, if you try to add two different data types, let's say for instance now we are trying to add string to an integer, it's going to throw us an error. This shows that we can't concatenate a string with an integer, except if we convert the integer to a string data type, and there is a way to do that. So let's try and show this to us to get to understand what they mean by adding a string to an integer, which will throw us an error. So let's go back to our IDE early. So let's enter, let's write a name. Let's make use of my name. So Abib plus 3 should throw us an error. You can see said trace back most recent collapsed file. Okay, so it says the type error can only concatenate str, which means string, not integer. So it can only concatenate a string to another string, but not string to integer or string to float. It can only concatenate string and string only. So we need to understand that. So we are doing concatenation of string, so it's only string to string, not string to other data types. So we need to understand that very well. So but now we can actually convert our integer to int. To do that, we have some functions in Python, some built-in function that we can make use of to convert an integer to a string data type. So when we get there, we'll be explaining that to us. So let's go back to our slide. Yeah, so the star operator, let's talk about the star operator. The star operator is used for multiplication when it operates on two integers or floating point values. So all we know basically is that we make use of the star operator, which is the multiplication operator, to multiply two integers or integer with a floating data type, or both of the data types together. But we can make use of the operator, can make use of it, can be used on one string value and one integer value. So what you are trying to say here is that you can actually make use of the multiplication operator with a string and an integer. Let's say for instance now we have hello, we can multiply hello with 5 or 10 or any integer. So and it becomes a string replication operator. So what it does at that point is that it replicates the string being multiplied with. So let's say for instance now we have hello, we now multiply it with 5. It's going to replicate hello 5 times. To replicate it 5 times, so it will print hello word 5 times. It will be hello, 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 hello. Let's show ourselves that. And lastly, before we go there, so the star operator can be used with only 2 numeric values for multiplication, or 1 string value and 1 integer value. What they are trying to say here is that we can use the star operator to multiply just 2 numbers together, like 2 times 2, 2 times 3. Likewise, it can be only used on 1 string and 1 integer. So it's not like we are going to multiply a string times we are going to multiply a string with 2 integers. No, that doesn't work. So it's a string with 1 integer, 1 integer with 1 string. So let's show ourselves that. So let's open our IDE and show us how to do that. So now we have our hello. So we want to multiply it with 5 and press enter. You can see our hello is printed 5 times. Hello, hello, hello. So to be more clear, let's add space to the back of hello to give those strings spaces. So let's don't forget our quotes. So multiply by 5. You can see we have hello printed 5 times. So that's the work of multiplication sign. So we can only make use of the addition and multiplication for concatenation and replication. So the rest of the arithmetic operators are not used for string concatenation or string replication. So that's that about that one. So let's continue with our work. So now let's move to the next thing in line, which is storing values in variables. Yeah, this sounds somehow. So, but in programming language, we need to learn how to store values, our values into variables. So a variable is like a box in the computer memory. It's just like a box in our computer memory where you can store a single value. It's just a variable stores just a single value. So it can't store more than a single value. It's either it stores a single value. If you assign a new value to it, it will overwrite the existing value. It will overwrite the existing value. So it won't be printing the old one, to be printing the new one. So that's how variable works. So I will try as much as possible to explain that to us. So if you want to use the result of an evaluated expression later in your programming, you can save it inside a variable. That's one of the importance of variables. So if you are storing a value in a variable, you are storing it because you want to make use of that value later on in your programs. So let's say for instance you're writing a whole lot of programs. So now there is a particular value that you'll be needing on and on. Let's say for instance now you'll be needing a string that is long as let's say like 10,000 words, or even maybe lesser or more than that. So but it's the same thing that you'll be needing on and on. Or let's say a particular value, maybe 3.46 kinikon. Let's take pi for an example. So pi is like 3.1 142 if I'm not mistaken also. So, and you know you'll be needing pi on and on. So you can just save that value, that 3 points for 142 or so. You can just save it in a variable. So anytime you need it, you can just go back and call the variable. You just say, let's say for instance, just say pi, which is pi, equals to 3.14. So you save the variables, the 3.14, the value to that particular variable. So anytime you need the value 3.14, just call the pi. So it will automatically print the value of that variable, which is 3.14. So anywhere you enter pi, it will always be that value in it. So anytime you need the value, just call the variable name. So that's it. Assignment statement. So to make a variable, there are some things that we need to understand. We need the variable name, an assignment statement which is equals to, and the value that wants to store inside that variable. So let's see a variable as a box that wants to save something into, a particular value into, or an entity into. So you will store values in variables with an assignment statement. An assignment statement consists of a variable name, an equal sign called the assignment operator, and the value to be stored. If you enter the assignment statement spam is equals to 42, then the variable named spam will have the integer value 42 stored in it. So as you can see from this image now, we have the spam, which is our box. The value is what is 42, and what the assignment operator does is that is the one that saves the value into that variable box. So that's the simplest explanation we can give to variable declaration. So now with this, now spam is equals to 42, we've been able to declare our variable. So anytime we need 44 now, we can just call the spam. Okay, let's show ourselves how to do this. So let's go to our IDLE and try this out. So on our IDLE, let's enter spam is equals to 42, or a bigger value, let's say 420, 4,242,000. So now let's come down here. We will call spam now. We are going to get that value spam. Sorry, let's print spam. Yeah, so okay, I'm using cap locks. Print, because of the cap lock that is giving me error. Okay, sorry, Python is case sensitive. Okay, actually wrote some. Okay, I made mistake calling this. So it's actually not spam. I wrote SAPM. So that's all I'm supposed to write, SAPM. So you can see we have our value, which is 42,000. So we need to note what we enter. You can see what I entered earlier here as my as my variable name is different from what I'm typing to print the values. So let's rewrite that. Let's say spam is equals to 42. I'll save that. So we call spam now. We have our value 42. So you can see. So that's just it. So now let's talk about something else. So now, like I said earlier now, let's say for instance that we saved a particular value to our variable, and later on we assigned another value to that same variable name. What will happen is that the old variable the new variable will overwrite the old one. So as you can see here now, let's say for instance that we assign the value hello to our spam. So along our program, we now assigned another value goodbye to that same variable name. So the next time you call spam, what it will print out will be the new variable, the new value assigned to it, which is goodbye. Let's show ourselves how that works. So let's go to our Python IDE and see how it works. So you say our spam now is equals to hello. This has been saved. So we run our spam, we should print hello. Yeah, so we have our hello now. So let's now say the same spam, we assign another value to it. So our spam now is now equals to goodbye. And that's saved. So the next time we call our spam, all we'll have will be the new value assigned to it. So let's call spam now. We shouldn't be expecting hello anymore. It should be goodbye now. So you can see we have our goodbye. So the moment you assign another value to your variable, it automatically forgets the older one. So you need to know that. So when you are assigning values to your variable, so variable names. Let's talk about variable names. How do we declare variable names? So you can name a variable anything as long as it obeys the following 3 rules. So we have 3 rules that our variable names must obey. So the first one is that it can be only one word. So it can be a single word. Let's say spam. Let's say it can be it can be anything word. So it can be hello itself or anything. So it can use only letters and numbers and the underscore character. So you can make use of letters, numbers, and character, like all joined together, no space between them. So it can't begin with a number. We should note that too. It cannot begin a variable name with a number. So these are the valid variable names that we have. So we have, you can see we have balance, That's a nine. That it obeys the variable name to declaration. We have current balance. You can see it's joined together. There is no space between it. If we have space, it won't be valid. So we have current balance. We have underscore spam. That's right. We have spam capital letter. It obeys it as well. We have account for. It obeys it. So that's how to declare variables. So let's try and check some. Let's try some examples to see how it works. So let's go to our Python IDE. So okay. So let's say spam is equals to underscore spam is equals to 34. Let's say spam itself is equals to 42. Sorry, we didn't add the assignment statement, so that's an error, invalid syntax. So the spam is equals to 42. So you can see it accepts it. While our spam, okay, you can use small letter. Spam is equals to 30. So let's print spam and see we have 30. Let's print spam and see we have 42. So let me try and explain this. You can see that when we enter the same spam, but it has the difference of capitalizing. So we capitalize the first one and the second one is in small letter. So one thing you need to understand is that Python is case sensitive. If there's anything that changes from our variable name, so let's say for instance that maybe let's declare another variable, the first letter to be capital letter and the rest to be small letter, and we assign it the same spam, assign it to a value. So let's say 40. Now we call that spam. You can see our value will be 40. We call the one in lowercase, still there 30. We call the one in uppercase. So Python is case sensitive. It sees everything as different variables. Sees it as different variables, even though they are the same words, but it sees them as a different variables entirely because it's case sensitive. So you need to note that when you make use of a capital letter to declare a case sensitive a variable, sorry, and you are making use of the lowercase, you are calling the lowercase, it won't give you what you need. It might be throwing error, or possibly maybe if you declared another variable in a small letter before, in a lowercase letter before, it will be giving you the value of that lowercase. So you need to note that very well, just to avoid any error. So those are the examples of variable declarations that we can make. So let's continue. So let's write a program that says hello and asks for our name, So to do that, one thing we need to understand is that you can say from our interactive shell, we don't really have, all we can do is just a line of code, just to run a line of code. So now let's say we want to run a code that is much. We need to write a code that is much and run it. So that's where making use of Python editor comes in. So our interactive shell has a Python editor that we can make use of. So we can write all the codes that we want and run it on the IDLE. So I'll be showing us how to open the editor and run our program. So now let's do that. Let's come to our ID. So now if you come here, file, I'll open a new file. So this is our editor. We can write our Python code here. So after writing it, so we can now run it and have our results on the IDLE here. So we want to write a Python program that says hello and asks for our name. So let's do that. Right. So our ID, let's open our ID. Sorry, can we see the ID and the Python editor? Okay, let me try and add it. Okay, yeah, so this is our editor. So we can write our programs here. We can write the program here. So let's go back to our editor and we'll start writing our code. So we say, okay, let's start by printing hello world first. So it says print hello world. So this will print our hello world for us. And the next thing we want it to print what is your name? That's another program. So after printing name, this will actually ask for our name. So ask for your name. So the next thing is to request us to enter our name. So now we can do that by my name will be equals to input. So what input does is that it takes in it takes in our what's called our input. So input. So after then you can tell it to print it for us, to print what we entered for us. Print it's nice meeting you. it's nice to meet you. So we'll make use of a concatenation here. So it's nice. So it's nice to meet you. So we add it, my name. So I'll close our brackets. So let's save it and run it. Let's save it, our first program. This is our first program. So let's save it. So let's try to run it. So we can come here, click on our run, and we run the module. So just click on run module and it will run. Okay, why scanning string? Okay, I think there's an error here. So let's see where the error comes from. So okay. Okay, so I'm still having the same error. So I think maybe there is a problem with, I'm having a problem with my IDLE here. I think so, because this should work. So okay, aside this Python IDLE, there are other editors that we can make use of. We have Pycharm, we have Sublime Text, we have Visual Codes. They can be used to edit as well, to write Python code. So okay, not to waste much of our time, let's make use of the Pycharm. So I will copy my code there and go and run it in Pycharm. So let me show you Pycharm. Pycharm is a Python IDE, a Python editor. You can make use of it. Is very easy to use as well. So let me show us Pycharm. So this is Pycharm. So let's make use of Pycharm. Let's make use of it. Okay, so let's go to our Pycharm. So let's come down there and open a new Python file. So let's say our first program. So that's my name. So let's paste our code here. So we have our code to print this. So let's run our code. Can run our code by right clicking and run my name. So I think we still have the same error. Okay, so this is where the error comes in. So forgot to add this to that. So can actually make use of that. Let's go back to the editor. Let's go back to the editor. Let's go back to it and forget about Pycharm now. So the editor. So let's make use of the editor now. So let's try and run it again and see what happens. let's run it. I think I got where the error is. So we have an error here. So let's run it and see what will happen. Okay. So yeah, it's working. Yeah, it's working. So we have it here. It says, "Hello world, what is your name?" So let me enter my name. So my name is Abib. What is your name? Still insists on my name. So I made a mistake. I made a mistake there. So let's try and run it again. Asks for my name. I'm supposed to impute my name, right? So let's run it and see what happens. Bits. Okay, run module. So we have it. So let me type my name. My name is Abib. You can see it's down there. My name is Abib. So press enter. You can see it says it is nice to meet you, Abib. So that's perfect. So now let's try and explain the code to us, how it works, what we wrote inside the code. So you can see the first thing we did here is to print hello world. So we just did that to, it's a normal thing for it's like a normal thing for a beginner to print hello world. That used to be our first program, right? So print hello world. So print is a function in Python. It's an inbuilt function in Python. So it's used to print out statements. So let's say for instance now we write all our codes and we want to see what we've done. We want to see the output of what we've written, of the old codes that we've written. So we can just print hello world. Oh, sorry. We can make use of the print function to see what we've done so far. So that's the work of print. Print is used for printing out statements. So that's the work of print, and is an inbuilt function for Python. So after printing the hello world, we make use of that same print function to ask for the user's name. What's your name? So, and we all know that we don't know the name, we don't know the user's name. So we need to prompt the user to enter his or her name. So that's why we declared a variable called my name. So which is equals to impute. So what the impute and the open and closing bracket does is that it takes in the input what the user crunches on his or her system. So like I did earlier, the moment I run hello world, as you can see here, it asks what is your name, and I enter my name is Abib. I entered Abib. So and it takes in the Abib, which is my name, and printed the last statement, which says it is nice to meet you, Abib. So basically what we did on this last line was that we make use of the print statement, which is the print function, and we enter just a nice phrase just to welcome the person. It is nice to meet you. Plus we concatenated the inputs of that person, the inputs of the user to our phrase, which is it is nice to meet you. Who do you want to meet? Who is the person that we just met? That's Abib. So it is nice to meet you, Abib. So that's just it. We can also try the same thing on our own side and see how it works. So print, we make use of two inbuilt function of Python here, we make use of the print function and we make use of the input function. Later on this program, we'll be explaining what function is to us and show us functions and show us some other inbuilt Python functions too as well. So that's that about our first program. So let's move on with our class. Okay. So now, dissecting your program, so I will talk about that later. So let's talk about flow control. So flow control statements can be decided which Python instructions to execute under which conditions. So let's show ourselves a flow chart for what to do if it wins. So this is a flow chart that explains to us about if it wins, what to do if it wins. So we start from the start statement. So it asks us, our program asks us, is it raining? If it is raining, if it is yes, then so if it is raining, if it says yes, then the next thing to do is to get an umbrella. Do you have an umbrella? If yes, then go outside. If it is not raining, which is no, go outside, the program ends. But if it is raining and we have an umbrella, you can go out as well. But if you don't have an umbrella, then wait a while. After waiting a while, if it is still raining, you still keep waiting. But if you have an umbrella, then you do what? You go outside. But if it is not raining anymore, then you can just go out and end. You can see how simple this flowchart is. So basically, this is how programming is. If you are asked to write a program now, all you need to do is just try and understand. First thing is that try to understand the statement, the problem statement. After understanding this problem statement, try to draw a flowchart of your problem statement. Draw a chart to solve it. After drawing it, then you write an algorithm for it. Then before you go to your PC and crunch your codes and run it. So programming is not something that is very difficult. Sorry to say, it's not that difficult. But all you need to do to understand is that try and understand your problem statement before you rush to your PC and start writing codes. So that's very important to note. So now let's talk about Boolean values. Yeah, Boolean values. Not talked about that before, but we need to talk about it. This is an important thing to talk about under Python programming. So why the integer, floating point, and string data types have an unlimited number of possible values? The Boolean data type has only two values, which are true and false. Those are the two Boolean values that we have. Is either true or false, nothing else. True or false. So let's talk about comparison statements as well. Comparison operators compare. Comparison operators. So comparison operators compare two values and evaluate down to a single Boolean value. So basically, what that means is that matter how much the comparison operators you make use of, your endpoint will always sum up to be a particular Boolean value, which is either true or false. So we have like 6 of comparison operators that we can make use of. So which are, we have the equal to, we have not equal to, we have the less than, we have the greater than, we have the less than or equal to, and we have the greater than. or equal to. So one thing we need to note here is that we need to note our equal to. There is a difference between the equal to operator and our assignment operator. Our assignment operator is just a single equal sign, while our equal to operator is a double equal sign. So we need to know that their operations are different. One is for assignment statement, one is for comparison statement. So for our comparison operator, we make use of the double equal to, while for assigning variables, we make use of a single equal sign. So that's very important. So our Boolean operator, let's talk about Boolean operators. The three Boolean operators are and, or, and not, are used to compare Boolean values, like comparison operators. So we have comparison operator, we have Boolean operator. We need to understand that very well. Comparison operator, they are the operators, they are the equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Why the Boolean operators are and, or, and not. They are just three: and, or, and not. Those are the Boolean operators. So they evaluate this expression down to a Boolean value as well. Binary Boolean operators and the not operators. So the binary Boolean operators are or and not. Why the not operator is not? So you have to understand that. So binary Boolean operators. So you can see here that the and or operators always take two Boolean values. They take just two Boolean values or expressions. So they are considered binary operators. The and operator evaluates an expression to true if both Boolean values are true. Otherwise, it evaluates to false. So we need to understand that the and operator it can be only true when the both statements are true, and the rest will be false if any of the statements are false, or the two operators are false. So, but for the or operator, on the other hand, for the or operator, the or operator evaluates an expression to true if either of the Boolean values is true. If both are false, it evaluates to false. So the or operator can only be false if the both statements are false. So you can see from our table down here, you can see our expression for the truth table for the and. We have true and true evaluates to true. True and false evaluates to false. False and true evaluates to false. False and false evaluates to false. While on our table for the or operators, we have true or true to be equals to true. We have true or false to evaluate down to true. False or true to evaluate down to true. False or false to evaluate down to false. So we need to understand that very well. So it is very important. So now let's talk about the not operator. So unlike and or, the not operator operates on only one Boolean value or operation. So the not operator simply evaluates to the opposite Boolean value. So basically what that means is that we are having true now. Let's say we have true and we apply the not operator to it. It will evaluate down to the opposite value of that expression. So on our table now, our truth table for not operators, you can see that not true will evaluate down to false, while not false will evaluate to true. I hope we get that. So before we move on, let's try and see how that works on our IDLE. let's try some. Let's lay our hand on some examples to explain that. So let's go to our ID. Okay. Yeah. So let's try and clear this. Okay, let's just continue now. So let's say true. I want to see if we can just clear everything. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let me just open a new. Yes. Okay. File, and let's go to Python. Yeah, ID. Let's run this new window caption and sorry. Okay, I hope you can see that now. Yeah, so we have a new page now, so you can just type our, let's try our and. So the one thing we need to understand is that if we are doing our true, our first letter for the true or false should always be in capital letter. So true and true will give us what? Will give us true. So true and false will give us false. True and okay, false and true will give us false. False and false will give us false. So for the OR operator, so say true or true will give us true. True or false will give us true. True, false or true will give us true. Why false or false will give us false. So for the NOT operator, so we say not true, we evaluate down to what? To be false. And not false, we evaluate down to be what? To be true. So now Can see from our code now that for the AND operator, it is only true when both statements are true, and is false when the rest are either true or false. But for the OR operator, it is only false when the two are false and true for the rest. The NOT operator gives the opposite value of our expression. So not true will give us false, not false will give us true. So I think with this we understand how our Boolean operators works. So that's that about that one. So I think we should stop our class for today. So tomorrow, by God's grace, we'll continue from where we stopped. Thank you very much for the class.